All right, let's talk about turning disruption into a real competitive advantage. Now, this isn't some dense IT manual. Think of this as a strategic playbook for leadership, designed to help you build an organization that doesn't just survive shocks to the system, it actually thrives on them. Let's get right into it.
I want to start with just one number, 66%. So, what's that all about?
Well, according to the Uptime Institute, that's how many organizations got hit with an outage in just the last 3 years. And get this, 1 in 5 of those was classified as severe. The big takeaway for anyone in a leadership role is pretty stark. It's really not a question of if a disruption is going to happen anymore. It's a question of when and, just how bad it's going to be.
So, here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to talk about why disruption is inevitable, and then reframe resilience as your new competitive edge. Then we'll get into the nitty-gritty 3 strategic pillars you can actually use. We'll also cover the economics of it, a huge trap you need to avoid, and we'll wrap up with how to build a truly future-proof enterprise.
Okay, first things first, we have to understand what we're actually up against. And believe me, the word disaster means a lot more today than it used to.
Look, we're not just talking about hurricanes or hackers anymore. The modern threat landscape is, well, it's everything. Disruption can come from right inside your own walls, simple human error or a hardware failure. And critically, it can come from your wider ecosystem. A single point of failure in your supply chain can be just as damaging as a direct attack. A real resilient strategy has to see the whole board, not just a few pieces.
This brings us to the core strategic shift we need to make. It's all about moving away from a reactive posture, just recovering after things go wrong, to a proactive strategy of true organizational resilience.
So I want you to ask yourself this question and be honest. Thinking about your own organization, are you built to recover or are you built to be resilient? Because trust me, those are 2 very, very different things. This image just says it all, doesn't it? Resilience is like a flexible branch. It can bend under pressure without snapping. Your operations keep running. Recovery? Well, that's what you have to do after the branch has already broken. And that means downtime, that means lost money, and that means a big hit to your reputation. Let's break this down a little further. On the left, you've got traditional business continuity, or BC. That's usually stuck in a silo, right? An IT thing, maybe an operations thing. But on the right, you have organizational resilience, or OR. That's holistic. It's enterprise-wide. The goal isn't just to keep the lights on in one department. It's to make the entire organization tough, adaptable, and almost impervious to whatever gets thrown at it. Okay, so that's the what and the why, but how do you actually build this? That brings us to the actionable part of this playbook. Here are the 3 strategic pillars your leadership team needs to drive. Now, if you take away only one thing from this, let it be this. Strategy dictates technology, not the other way around. Real, lasting resilience isn't born in the server room. It's born in the boardroom. It has to be. It begins when leadership sets the high-level business priorities, and then everything else just flows from there. And the process itself boils down to 3 clear steps. First, you assess. You have to do a real risk analysis and a business impact analysis to put actual dollar signs on what a disruption would cost you. Second, you architect. You use all that data to design your formal plans. And third, and this is so important, you validate. You test the plan. You kick the tires. Because honestly, a plan that hasn't been tested isn't a plan. It's just a hypothesis. And that first step, the business impact analysis, is so critical because it leads us right into the economics of survival. This is how you build the business case for actually making the investment. We have to frame this as a calculated investment, not an expense. Look at the scales here. On one side, you've got the cost of getting ready. But on the other, you have the absolutely crushing cost of downtime. We're talking lost revenue, massive fines, and damage to your brand that can take years to repair. That business impact analysis we talked about, that's what gives you the hard data to show which side of the scale is heavier. But, and this is a big but, the investment has to be rational, which brings us to this core principle. Do not build a solution that costs 200 times more than the disaster would have. It's all about being proportional. You don't build a fortress to deal with a bit of rain. You match the solution to the actual risk you've identified. Okay, so you've made the plan, you've made the investment, you're done, right? Well, not so fast. This is where we hit one of the biggest, most dangerous traps out there. Let's talk about the resilience gap. This chart shows it perfectly. Your business is always changing. You're adopting new tech, moving to the cloud. But what about your resilience plan?
If that's just a document sitting on a shelf collecting dust, you get this ever-widening gap between your plan and your reality. And that gap, that's just pure unmanaged risk.
And this gap creates some really specific modern blind spots. Which brings me to our next number, 33%. So what's that? It turns out over a third of companies are making a really dangerous assumption. They think that because they use a SaaS application, the provider is handling all their data backup. They're confusing the app being online with their data being safe and available. This is a perfect example of how that change gap can expose you to a massive risk you never even saw coming.
So the big question is, how do we close that gap? How do we build an enterprise that's truly future-proof? The answer is you have to stop thinking of resilience as a one-and-done project.
The solution is to turn this whole process into a perpetual engine. Remember those 3 pillars, assess, architect, validate? Well, they become a continuous loop with one critical new step added in, adapt. It's a cycle. As your business changes, your resilience strategy has to change right along with it. When you do that, resilience stops being a static defense and becomes a dynamic capability and a lasting competitive advantage.
And building this kind of strategy sets you up for what's coming next. On the horizon, we're seeing cybersecurity and resilience basically become the same discipline. To fight sophisticated ransomware, companies are even going back to air-gapped, fully offline tape storage. And of course, AI is on its way, promising real-time risk assessment. A truly resilient organization is ready for what's next.
So I'll leave you where we began, with that fundamental choice every leader has to make. In a world of constant, inevitable disruption, is your organization built to bend, or is it built to break? The choice really is yours.